Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. While colleagues join us today, I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar on best practices on integrating gender equality and social inclusion in energy and climate change projects and initiatives. My name is Marina, and I'm a legal officer working with the Regional Governance Program Coordinator here at the UNEP Asian Pacific Office, and I'll be your moderator today. I think I'll just wait for like a minute while colleagues are still joining us and we can start. So just a minute. So while colleagues are joining us, I'd like to share that this webinar, as you know, is part of a series convened by UNEP and UN Women under the Empower Joint Program, which is a collaboration with the Climate Technology Center Network, CTCN, a body mandated by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to assist developing countries in establishing and enhancing environmentally sound technologies to address climate change challenges. The Empower program, it's as I said, is a joint program that aims to strengthen gender equality and human rights in climate change and disaster risk actions in the Asia Pacific region. The program is now in its second phase, where the focus is on scaling up lessons learned and approaches developed by the program. This brings us to today, as the goal of this webinar is to share knowledge on best practices for integrating gender and social inclusivity. We have a fantastic group of speakers lined up, and I would like to invite all participants to make good use of our Q&A chat box in the bottom of your screen, on the top of your screen, which should be appearing there. And we have plenty of dedicated time for questions. So please make sure to identify yourself when you're submitting your questions, as well as the speaker that the question is directed to. And also, just to make sure that the session runs smoothly today, we kindly ask for participants who are not speaking to keep your microphone muted. I think we can start with our first speaker of the day. Without further ado, it's a pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker, Sharon Molly. Molly is a climate technology specialist with over 5 years of experience in climate change adaptation and mitigation, climate finance, and environmental and social safeguards. In her current role at the United Nations Climate Technology Center and Network, she supports the design and implementation of technical assistance in developing countries, as well as oversees the centers and networks work on gender and technology needs assessment. Today, Sharon will provide us with an introduction to the Gender Policy and Action Plan from the Climate Technology Center and Network. So Sharon, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Marina. Hi, everyone. So good to be here today. I'm going to be sharing my screen just shortly. We will begin. So if you can see my screen, just
Yes, we can
nod
see
if
your
you have your
screen.
own.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
great. Okay. So um I think Marina really did a great job setting the scene already, and I'm just going to jump straight into it. And at any point, if you cannot hear me, please make some noise. Yeah. So basically, the CTCN, as you know, our mandate is to stimulate this climate technology transfer to the developing nations at their request. And of course, this involves technical assistances, also capacity building, and also we do lots of work with research and development. And to ensure that our work is inclusive for everyone, we introduced this gender policy and action plan. And the rationale of this gender policy and action plan was, the understanding that women as well as men significantly contribute to combating climate change. So having everybody involved in the conversation for efforts towards climate change mitigation and adaptation is very crucial. And therefore, the understanding that everybody should be involved is what motivated the development of this gender policy and action plan at the CTCN. So we, of course, recognize how women are disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, due to sometimes gender inequalities and social and cultural norms which affect them, their access to resources. And so we saw that it's important to ensure that we mainstream gender in all activities at the CTCN. And the main objective of this gender policy and action plan was to see, equality in all our operations, and also to ensure that we reduce the gender gap in climate change, exacerbated social, economic, and environmental vulnerabilities, and to also increase women's access to knowledge and information, and then address need to increase women's equal participation in decision making. So here what I mean is we do technical assistances, we do capacity building to developing nations, but then during these stakeholder workshops that we have and consultations, we make sure, is there everybody involved in these conversations, and what is the responsiveness in these actions that we do? How many women are present, and how does our work affect the women as well as the men? And so having everybody in conversation in these rooms where we are doing, whether it is a technical assistance on solar powered irrigation systems, whether it's a technical assistance on, I don't know, decarbonization of cement from, in the cement industry, how do we ensure that everybody is part of the conversation and we understand how these technologies can influence both sides? So of course, the CTCN involves both our governance side. So the gender policy is including the governance and institutional structure, but also our work in our operations. So this gender policy is ensuring that we have a gender parity in appointment of our management, and also our advisory board, as well as the secretariat always has a gender focal point. So I am currently doing this work. Previously, we had other colleagues who were the gender focal point of the CTCN. So that's basically on the institutional side. But then the most important part is our work and how we make sure that we are gender responsive in that sense. So what we have done is, let me see if I can just minimize or. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so what we've done is we've developed this new template that we're calling the Gender Assessment and Action Plan template. And this is used through our technical assistance implementation. So this gap, as we call it, it ensures that we look at gender responsiveness throughout the CTCN technical assistance implementation. And our implementing partners who are part of the network of the CTCN are onboarded to understand this gap. And usually all our technical assistances, we have a gender expert as part of the expert team. And so they understand the gap and they use the gap template developed by us, by the Secretariat, to ensure that every technical assistance or every role that the CTCN is involved in is adhering to this gender assessment and action plan template, which I'll talk about more in the next slides. In addition to this, part of the gender policy is we ensure now that 5% of the budget of each CTCN technical assistance is geared towards gender mainstreaming and gender responsiveness. So how we do this is we have actually, this is still in development. We are developing this tool that will help us monitor. So if we say that we are using 5% of the budget to towards gender mainstreaming. How can we quantify that? Yeah, so this tool is going to support us in doing that, and this is currently under development. And then in addition to that, the CTCN works with 5 system transformation areas. One of them is water, energy, food nexus. We do work with energy systems, business and industry, sustainable mobility, as well as business and infrastructure. So these system transformation areas are also supported by 2 key enablers, which is digitalization and national systems of innovation. Basically like an umbrella of where the CTCN work is focused. And we have ensured that we are developing these sector-specific guidelines. So how do we develop guidelines for energy systems, especially being gender responsive as far as energy system is concerned, or water, energy, food ecosystems. So these sector-specific guidelines will support our implementing partners to understand how they can go about gender responsiveness in each technical assistance. And so as I mentioned, the gap that has been developed by the CTCN. So basically this gender assessment and action plan, it just ensures that, okay, in our capacity building, are we addressing the specific needs of women, men, and marginalized groups? And then what is the data collection looking like? Make sure that we are making decisions that are taking into account the specific needs of both men and women, and also they are part of the decision-making process. And then, of course, in leadership roles, ensuring that, okay, we have a focal point for gender in each of the activities that we undertake. And I think that's a snippet of the gap that was just in this previous slide. In our work on monitoring and evaluation, so of course we have part of work that continues in the design stage before we kick off technical assistance, which is the response plan, where we collect what will be needed, and we refer to this sometimes as the terms of references. Yeah, is there a question there? Okay, yeah, so as terms of references. So this usually we ensure also that as we are developing this response plan, gender mainstreaming analysis is also taken into account. So this is included. So our gap, it basically starts its journey as soon as the response plan design stage, and at the same time, it's also evident during the implementation phase. And of course, in the closure report, now we look at how it went and how much data was collected using the gap. And maybe some examples of our work recently. We've done a technical assistance in Cambodia on market assessment in the application of climate technologies in agriculture sector for rural development. And this is some of our gender focused years. Like we saw how in this technical assistance, we prioritize gender equality and inclusivity in the climate technologies utilized by Cambodia's agriculture and water sector. As well as in Indonesia, this technical assistance on climate smart agriculture. Of course, you see how this specific technology transfer TS, you see how if you do not involve both genders in the conversation, some people would be left behind, because men as well as women practice climate smart agriculture. So if you're making process. And of course, our work on capacity building, ensuring that we have gender mainstreaming at our regional forums, which are actually our LAC, that is the Latin America and the Caribbean ND forums actually coming up. And we also follow that gender mainstreaming is taken into account, and also at our SBs at COP and other climate technology events. So basically, that is just to mention that our gender policy and action plan ensures that in all our operation areas, be it technical assistance, be it capacity building, and of course, networking and partnership, that the policy is followed. So as our network members are onboarded, they are made aware of the gender policy and action plan. And then, of course, we maintain a gender roster for gender experts. And so we are able to usually from our platform attract applicants and at the same time have access to experts in this sector so that when we need experts or their needs from elsewhere, we can refer to our gender roster that we keep on our CTCN website. So of course, I already mentioned these sector-specific guidelines that we're developing for system transformation areas. And we have for the national systems of innovation as well as energy systems coming on board soon. And then just one case, we have the 9th edition of the Gender Just Climate Solutions, where the CTCN collaborated with the Women Engaged for Common Future, that is WCF, and the Women and Gender Constituency in the Gender Just Climate Solutions Awards. And this supported women. I will actually mention this example in this slide on knowledge sharing, where these women were supported with solar cookstoves, and the implementation of this technology actually really ensured that they were able to have access to energy during even the most difficult times in terms of weather and climate. So in our information dissemination, we make sure that we do regular updates, and also we share best practices on promoting gender and of course indigenous and marginalized groups. So like this webinar today is a great example of how we can talk about this CTC and gender policy, and also learn from audiences and responses that we receive from colleagues that, okay, how can we improve? Because the idea of introducing this gender policy and action plan was also to improve it and to make it more aware of what is happening now and what the people are asking for in terms of responsiveness and also mainstreaming. And YAM, one of our big programs, AFSIA, we've ensured that, okay, in producing these fact sheets, we are able to quantitatively talk about our gender mainstreaming efforts. And that is the last slide. I'm gonna stop there. And if there are any questions, I'm not sure how we're doing it, Marina. Are we just finishing to the end and then ask
we're going to take
questions?
them
Okay.
in one
Yeah.
session again. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you so much, Molly, for this great introduction to the CTCN Gender Policy and Action Plan, including like the governance structure, the scope. And for me, it was particularly interesting to hear how they support integrating these gender considerations into CTCN's technical assistance, like all stages of technical assistance, but also capacity building and broader work. It was also really interesting to hear about the tool under development to track the budget allocation and also the sector-specific guidelines. As we discussed, I'd like to remind all participants that we'll be taking the questions at the end of all presentations. So I'd like to kindly encourage you to use the Q&A function. It's in the top of your screen to share your questions with Molly and me, and we'll get back to them very, very soon. So thank you so much again, Molly. Our next speaker is Amur Shrikant. It's a pleasure to introduce him. He's a consultant with the UN Women Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, and he works at the intersection of women's entrepreneurship and climate action. He has worked across South and Southeast Asia and Africa on themes such as livelihoods, women's entrepreneurship, social enterprise ecosystem building, gender mainstreaming, impact investing, small and medium enterprises financing, enterprise support, and the care economy. So today, he'll share more about how to undertake gender equity and self-assessments using tools from UN Women's Women Empowerment Principles. So Amor, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Marina. Thanks for having me. I hope everybody can hear me and a very good afternoon. My name is Amar and I work on women's economic empowerment at UN Women's Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. Well, I think Molly mentioned in her presentation that we already know that women and girls experience a disproportionate impact of climate change, which amplify existing gender inequalities and which threatens their livelihoods, their health, and their safety. In fact, UN Women Research notes that in a worst case climate path scenario, about 158 million more women and girls globally may be pushed into poverty over the coming years as a direct result of climate change. And 240 million more women and girls will face food insecurity. Now, the corresponding number for men is almost half of this, which underscores the gendered impact of climate change. What climate change does is it limits women's adaptive and responsive capacities and disproportionately impacts their economic autonomy. And this is because women generally tend to have limited access to or limited rights to productive resources that could help them cope and adapt, which makes them more vulnerable than men. So given all of this background, it is therefore very important that climate change interventions or climate interventions are designed and executed in a manner that take into account the specific needs and impacts on women. And in order for them to be designed and executed in that manner, it is critical that all aspects of the intervention are gender aware. And it was great to see the GAP tool from Molly earlier. I think guidance exists on how to incorporate gender into various climate interventions from multiple entities. On the government side, guidance exists to ensure that national adaptation plans or NAPs, for example, as they are known, include gender considerations, and that adopting tools and frameworks for gender analysis, for gender responsive facilitation, for multi-criteria analysis, gender mainstreaming in design and execution, gender responsive M&E, gender responsive budgeting. So how can all of these things help adaptation plans become more inclusive? Guidance exists not just from UN Women, but also from others such as the UNFCCC. In fact, I believe UN Women's guidance feeds into the guidance from UNFCCC and also other entities such as ADB here in the region, for example. So that's on the government side. On the private sector side, UN Women provides guidance through the Women's Empowerment Principles that Marina mentioned, or the WEPs as we call them, to enable gender analysis and ideation of ways to incorporate gender considerations in the operations of private sector companies, not just small and medium enterprises, but also larger corporations and startups. Now, such guidance is provided of course to the broader private sector, not just climate and renewable energy related companies, but to the broader private sector. And maybe we can put the link to the webs in the chat, Marina, if that's possible. So the webs essentially have been established by UN Women and the UN Global Compact and are informed by international labor and human rights standards. And they're grounded in the recognition that businesses have a stake and a responsibility for gender equality and women's empowerment. So I would request all of you to take a look at the resources on the website. And in fact, maybe I can show you a couple of items and a couple of resources that would be useful. So with your permission, Marina, I'll just share my screen and take everyone through a couple of documents. But I would request all of you to please take a look at them yourself. All right. So please let me know if you can see my screen. Hopefully it's
Yeah, we can
visible.
see
So
your screen. Thank you.
okay, excellent. So this is the website. Now I will quickly go to About Us. And here you will see the 7 women's empowerment principles. So the WEPs essentially are a set of 7 principles that guide private sector companies in incorporating gender considerations from leadership and their internal operations, um, in their internal workings, but also looking at the way they reach the market, the way they engage with their supply chain, the way they engage with the community. So I'll just quickly take you through what the WEPs are. So the first principle is about corporate leadership and how inclusive is your leadership. The second is about treating all women and men fairly in the workplace without discrimination. So it's about the workplace. Principle 3 is about employee health and well-being. Principle 4 is about education and training. So how are you ensuring that everybody is getting a chance to upskill and adapt to the changing work needs? Principle 5 is, as I mentioned earlier, enterprise development, supply chain, and marketing practices. So how are you looking beyond your own company and incorporating gender in all of your operations? Principle 6 is about community initiatives and advocacy. And lastly, principle 7 is about measurement and reporting. Now, for any company to adopt these principles and apply these principles, everything starts with a gender analysis, right? So first figuring out where do we stand as a baseline in terms of inclusion right now. And we recognize that this is something that companies often struggle with. So one of our most useful tools as part of the WEPs is what we call the gender gap analysis tool. So it is essentially probably similar to the gap tool that we saw from CTCN earlier. So what this tool basically does is it provides a list of questions that can help companies establish where they stand on all of these 7 principles. So for instance, it has a question like, does your company have leadership commitment? And it's not just a yes or a no, but it also provides multiple options within each response. So within a no or within a yes, which essentially helps companies establish where they stand on various aspects of the WEPs. So you'll see that it has got these multiple options for each question. And the reason they have been designed in this manner is because the answers to these questions will then help the company figure out what needs to be done in order to move from intention to action on gender equality. So once the WEPs questionnaire for the analysis, the gap analysis tool is taken, the next step, of course, is to create a gender action plan. And the WEPs also provide a template for the gender action plan. So essentially, once you figure out where you are, you can then use this template to set goals for yourself, identify indicators that you will track to measure how far you have gone on those goals, what the baseline is, what are the targets, who is the owner. So this template provides a step-by-step guide for companies to figure out where they want to be once they know where they are. And of course, there is the WEP's transparency and accountability framework that provides a set of indicators which can be used by companies to fill the gender action plan and then make sure that they are making progress towards those indicators. Now, although all of these tools are already available, our experience suggests that companies may still require support to effectively adopt these tools and put them to use and put them to practice. And UN Women routinely offers programs that can help organizations. The most recent one being the Gender Action Lab, which will be working with cohorts of companies in the ASEAN on specific pre-identified problem statements towards making businesses more gender inclusive. So I'll take a pause here. The WEPs offers a lot of guidance, and if you go to the website, if you go to the tab on resources, you will see a number of tools and resources that can help you. But I'll pause for here. And I'll hand it back to you, Marina, but happy to take any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amar, for reminding us of the disproportionate impacts that women and girls face due to climate change, and also to pointing us to this very useful existing guidance and tools. For me, more specifically, it was really great to learn more about the women empowerment principles and also the gender gap analysis tool. But also learn more about these programs offered by UN Women to support companies and other stakeholders to implement and discuss some of these tools. So I just want to remind colleagues, especially for the benefit of colleagues who might have just joined us, that we shared here in the chat the link to the tool. And we'll be sharing some other relevant resources that were included in Amar's presentation. But if you have any questions on either the women empowerment principles or the tools just presented, please just share those in the Q&A box, and we'll get back to them very shortly. In the meantime, I'd like to move on to our next presentation, and it's a pleasure to introduce you to Alexandra Mutungi. Alex is a gender and climate change expert with UNEP Regional Office for Asia Pacific. She currently works for the joint UNEP and UN Women Empower program as a Southeast Asia regional focal point. Her experience includes gender, environment and social safeguards, risk management for UNEP portfolio of projects, and also supporting civil society engagement in UNEP's environmental policy development implementation. So today, Alex will present how to develop gender energy indicators in energy climate programs, particularly focusing on learnings from the Empower program. So the virtual floor is yours, Alex. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marina, for the warm welcome. Let me just share my screen. Okay, able to see it.
I think it's still loading from my side. Just give it a second. Yeah, there you go. Please go ahead.
Excellent. So as Marina mentioned, good morning, everyone. I'll be taking you through how we develop gender indicators in energy and climate programs based on our experience with the Empower program. So just to give a brief overview of what the Empower program is, it's a joint partnership between UNEP and UN Women, and it is in its second phase. The first one started in 2018 and ending 2022, and the second phase is now for 5 years from 2023 to 2027. The program started initially with the pilot countries of Bangladesh, Cambodia, and Vietnam through the support of the Swedish government. And since then, we've been able to expand to 2 additional countries, which is Indonesia and Philippines, with the additional support of Germany, New Zealand, and Switzerland. The objective of the Empower program is to enhance climate resilience within the Asia Pacific by increasing gender-responsive climate action of different actors from government, the private sector, local communities, enhancing women's leadership in decision-making processes that highly impact their livelihoods, as well as boosting the livelihoods to be more climate resilient through policy development, mobilizing additional finance with microfinance institutions, and I'm also admitting people into the meeting, and raising awareness and capacity on gender and social inclusion, as well as fostering regional, sub-regional, and national partnerships through the SDG principles of human rights, gender equality, women empowerment, to ensure no one is left behind as we build climate resilience. So I will take you through a case study. It's similar to activities that we undertake through the Empower program. In this case, we're looking at a sustainable rural electrification initiative that aims to improve livelihoods of rural communities, small businesses, and community institutions by integrating access to clean and affordable electricity. So in this scenario would be program activities could be installation of solar home systems in households, the development of microgrids powered by renewable energy sources, training on safe and efficient use of electricity and maintenance of energy systems, as well as supporting communities in developing income generating activities. And so in order to design gender indicators, we first have to, there's 4 steps that you can take in most methodologies. So the first one would be to identify the gender issues. Now, how do we do this? Is oftentimes there's a gender analysis that has to take place during the project design phase. Now there's a plethora of tools, as colleagues have mentioned, from CTCN to UN Women to Empower's own tools as well. And this is a systematic methodological process of identifying mainly 4 key areas of gender aspects. So you're looking at the roles and responsibilities of different parts of society. In this case, looking at their access to energy. Second, you're looking at access and control to resources. Who is making the decisions, the household? Who is managing finances? Who has the decision-making power on how to use energy resources? Then understanding the specific needs and constraints of the different groups. So is it a lack of information, access to training, opportunities, etc. Then you want to identify the gendered impacts and then integrate these into your program. But because it is context specific, it's important to have stakeholder consultation throughout the program design and throughout the program management. And Empower has designed many tools from the first phase of piloting. And I just want to highlight one of them, which is the guide on renewable energy and women entrepreneurship programs. So if you use this, it can help you assess what are the gendered impacts in renewable energy and how you can develop businesses for women. So in our case study, the agenda analysis highlighted a few aspects, which includes that women oftentimes are the ones responsible for household chores, which are time consuming and energy intensive. And men are the ones who are often involved in income generating activities and have more access to training and information, whereas women are limited in their control of finances and decision-making power when it comes to energy. And there's also lack of lighting, which limits women's opportunity to generate income and participate effectively in community activities, especially after dark. And men might be more likely to be employed in installation and maintenance of energy systems. So now that we've identified the gender issues, then we can define the gender objectives and outcomes for your particular intervention. And we want to ensure that these are maintaining the project management principles of being SMART. So that is being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And you want to integrate these into the outcomes and objectives of your program, depending on the specific intervention. In our case, for example, the objectives could be, since women have labor-intensive activities, then this can be, how can we limit their time in energy-related tasks? Because they have limited access to income-generating activities, perhaps you want to design energy-related economic opportunities for them. Because they have limited access to finance and decision-making, we can see how that maybe can be integrated into your renewable energy intervention. You can provide access to training and employment opportunities, as well as safety and security for women. So there's the do good and there's the do no harm aspect that you can integrate into your project design. For the gendered outcomes, then this would look like perhaps you've increased women's time to have education and branch out of labor-intensive activities for more income-generating activities. You want to enhance their participation in economic activities, for instance, by developing more energy-related businesses. Also, you want to enhance their representation within decision-making processes, which is something that, for instance, Empower program has been able to do. And you want to increase the equal participation of men and women in energy training programs as it suits their needs. And you want to reduce the incidence of gender-based violence due to improving lighting in public spaces. So now that you have developed your gender objectives and outcomes, then now you can design the gender indicators. So this can take a variety of forms. They can be quantitative, for example, the number of women trained, percentage of increase in women's income, number of financial schemes developed. It can be qualitative, highlighting women's perceptions of increased safety, changes in household decision-making processes. It can be input indicators, for instance, how much budget is allocated to gender-sensitive training and to assigning or hiring gender experts, as mentioned in the CTCN presentation, or developing a communication strategy that's tailored towards raising awareness about gender issues. It can also be output indicators, looking at the number of women who participated in energy management committees, or outcome indicators that increase women's ownership of energy-related businesses. And last but not least, it can be impact indicators. This is looking at the enhancement of gender relations in the long term. For instance, seeing progress in the reduction in gender pay gaps, you see. But depending on whichever indicators that you choose to select, they have to ensure that they capture the different roles and needs of different genders. So some of the key principles to keep in mind as you're designing your gender indicators is, again, maintaining the SMART methodology, or in other words, being valid, reliable, feasible, relevant, and verifiable. But I want to focus specifically on the last one, which is to have specific indicators. In other words, having data that is disaggregated by sex, age, ethnicity, disability, status, income, race, as well as any other aspects that can capture the different experiences of different genders. Last but not least, after you've designed the gender indicators, it doesn't end there. You have to capture these in a gender action plan. As you've seen from previous presentations, there's many different formats for which you can adopt. And as you're doing your monitoring, you need to ensure that whatever tools or methodologies you are using are capturing gender disaggregated data that identifies areas for improvements so that you can adapt your project as needed. You can also utilize this information to inform your projects and also have a broader impact of informing policies and advancing energy objectives and the overall SDGs. So just to leave you with a few resources, if you want, you can scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen. This will give you a flavor of some of the tools that Empower has created. For instance, if you're doing a gender analysis, there's the state of gender equality and climate change in ASEAN that gives you that baseline assessment. You can use the ESG tool for establishing how you can make your financing more gender responsive. You can also use the renewable energy guidebook for women entrepreneurship to design more inclusive renewable energy projects that are income generating. Also, you can do if you want the basics on how to mainstream gender in climate change, there's also that tool as well. But I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I think your presentation really showed us how to integrate gender considerations throughout projects and program cycles, especially by developing, for example, gender analysis, developing smart gender objectives, outcomes and indicators, and also the importance of adequate monitoring, drawing from those real experiences in the Empower program. So thank you so much for that. I invite all participants, if you have any direct questions for Alex, please just share them in the Q&A box, which should be appearing on the top of your screen. And we'll get to them in about 10 minutes. And so moving on to the last but not least presentation of the day, it's my pleasure to introduce all of you to Yannick Milev. Yannick's the CEO of Shamaran Microfinance PLC, a Cambodia's social microfinance institution that focuses on low-income entrepreneurs, 80% women, and small and medium-sized enterprises, supporting priority sectors including agriculture, water, and energy transitions. So Yannick started his career in Ghana, setting up and running an NGO focused on women's empowerment, using a range of reproductive health and economic empowerment tools. Thereafter, he went on to work on across a range of countries in Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, across a number of NGOs and microfinance initiatives. So we're very happy to have Yannick with us, and he will present a case study on how gender equality and social inclusion can be applied in energy and climate initiatives. So the virtual floor is yours, Yannick. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Marina. Good morning, good afternoon, all. Pleasure to be here. So yeah, I'm the CEO of Chamran Microfinance, based in Cambodia, and we are an implementing partner of the Empower program in Cambodia for the second phase that was just referred to by Alexandra. So I'll just give a brief overview first of who we are. So we are a microfinance institution that was founded started in 2006 and then founded in 2009, registered with the central bank. So I think the vision was stated already by Marina, so thanks for that. I won't go and read there. We operate across the provinces you see here in Cambodia, but those are where our branch offices are. Serving around 30,000 borrowers, but we do have activities that outreach to other provinces, just without the hard branch office to represent those. So our average loan size is around $1,600, and 77% of our loans are women. So that's been the case across our history, 75 and 80% of borrowers being women. I've mentioned here the rural areas and agriculture exposure, as these are areas where the program with Empower is going to focus in terms of supporting a range of borrowers across the kind of renewable energy value chain, if we can say. Although not exclusively, but that's where the bulk of the focus will be. As you see, we have different types of loan programs. So individual loans, group loans, which are slowly less relevant in the Cambodian market, and then corporate loans, which focus on registered entities such as, for example, agricultural cooperatives, renewable energy providers, and focus essentially on priority sectors. So that's agriculture, water, and energy. So there's going to be quite a relevance to the Empower program within those more corporate-sized loans. So these are some of the examples of some of the work that we've done and have active outstanding portfolio in support to. So to the relevance here for the program or under the green and renewable energies and sustainable agriculture program, it's around $1 million there. And you see some of the examples there that fall within that category. So things like net houses or solar pumping, clean water supply, which all have ties to reducing the impact of climate change. And as mentioned, with 75% of those borrowers being women, we do have a program as well for agricultural cooperatives. So those are great platforms to have the members of the cooperatives have access to these renewable energy technologies. So we'll work with the distributors of renewable energy technologies, and we will link them up to cooperatives where they can then support and promote their access to the agricultural cooperative members with loan financing where relevant, either to the members or to the cooperative themselves, so distribution and promotion of those. And then we have the bulk of our work with support to individual farmers across both pre and post-harvest activities, and some of which can be for renewable energies. So that is the bulk of it. So the Empower program works with a local NGO and ourselves to support the promotion of access to finance for these renewable energy technologies. So the NGO works partly in terms of lead generation, where they have support in terms of technical capacity building, to make them more investment ready, and then we come in either directly to those companies or to the potential markets of those companies. For example, a solar water pump provider will then refer to us their potential clients who are asking for financing for those to those renewable energy technologies. Yeah, I think that is the essence of what I wanted to share with you today. I have to take questions on that.
Thank you so much, Yannick, for the great work and also this presentation. It was really great to hear more about Shimra and its partnership with Empower program, especially in relation to like access to finance for like energy and climate projects. I think with this, like we conclude the round of presentations. I'd like to once again thank our brilliant speakers for sharing their insights on how to integrate gender equality and social inclusion in energy and climate projects today. Now we're keen and we have about like 10-15 minutes to have a lively exchange. I would like to invite colleagues in the room, participants, if you have any questions, please do raise your hand to share these questions with us and we'll get to them. But I wanted to start with a more general question to all of the panelists. So I think we heard about a lot of interesting tools, mechanisms, and experiences. And I wanted to hear a little bit more, if you can expand on a little bit more on what is the key factor that you think that helps make gender equality and social inclusion really work in the context of climate and energy projects. So this is a small, like an initial question to all of the panelists. I'm not sure if anyone wants to take the floor initially, but maybe Alex, because you talk about the entire life cycle of this project. So if you want to share about some of the key success factors to make this integration really work, be really keen to hear that. Over to you, Alex, maybe to start.
Thanks, Marina. I think, yeah, just looking at I'm fairly new to the program, just so you know, I've only been here for 1 year, but based on my understanding of the activities in the first phase, I think one of the key components of success is ensuring that there's strong monitoring systems to ensure that whatever commitments have been set in place for gender and social inclusion are actually being implemented. And the support of different partners, particularly CSOs who have more information and are in touch with the communities, really helps with collecting the required information to ensure that we are actually meeting our targets. So say stakeholder engagement as well as the disaggregated information for monitoring.
Thank you so much, Alex. Maybe Amar, if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Sure. Thanks, Marina. I would just like to pick up on what Alex said earlier about stakeholder engagement. I think that is extremely important. I think in all of our presentations, we have kind of highlighted how women are disproportionately impacted by climate change. But it's important to not look at women as just those who are impacted, but also place them at the center of designing programs that mitigate climate change or towards climate action. So putting women's voices at the center of program design and program execution is very important. And that's where the stakeholder engagement comes in. So right from conception of the program through its design and its execution, it's important to take that perspective. Now, and increasingly, we have also seen a lot of women-led startups that operate in climate change, in climate tech, and it's important to support such entrepreneurs as well. In fact, UN Women recently conducted a program that supported women-led climate tech startups. Even UNEP does that, as you know. So I think placing women at the center of climate action, I think is important and is a success factor. Thanks. Back to you.
Fantastic. So we're talking about a protagonism and also a stakeholder engagement. I think maybe looking at you, Yannick, because you brought us like a very concrete example of a partnership and building what colleagues said. Maybe if you want to expand a little bit on like the success factors and also on how this projects are developed. We're really keen to hear some of your thoughts and reflections. Over to you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so as mentioned, since the beginning of the work, or more than 50 years ago, the women have always been the center of the work that we do. But we don't take that for granted. So as far as stakeholder engagement goes, we have yearly processes with quite large samples to ensure we get the feedback from women in terms of how they access services, what they want, what's positive about it, how it's impacting them, and of late, the idea is then to take that a step further into how the questions of climate change and access to renewable energies is felt by them and is enabled by us, but also by other initiatives in the country. So yeah, that's a key part of it. As far as the successes, I think from the gender side, I think we've had a lot of positive impacts felt in terms of how that has improved their livelihoods and how that in turn has impacted their family life and community life positively. From a climate side, it's a bit more challenging to gauge that just in terms of from the microfinance side, in terms of how we're really contributing to that. It's very difficult to develop these markets, very difficult to engage with a market approach communities, men and women, in terms of how they use renewable energy services. So these programs like Empower help us to really push that agenda, to build partnerships, and to do that more effectively.
Thank you so much. And I think now, like looking at Sharon from a more like kind of perspective of the gender policy and the action plan, I think in your presentation you discussed like how this provides some guidance for the integration, like the technical assistance work, but also the capacity building and on. So if you could just maybe expand on a little bit on the policy and the plan, and maybe we have also some CTCN members today on what kind of action might be expected of them or collaboration with them for the implementation of the policy at a more like general level. I think it'd be really interesting. So Sharon, if you could expand on that a little bit, be really keen to hear more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Marina. Yeah, so as I mentioned, actually, wanted to add just one more thing to what contributes to success factors when it comes to these tools before I dive into our own action plan, is that we saw how when you stay dynamic and flexible with these plans, or rather with these tools, it really speaks to the communities or the women who are targeted by these tools. We saw in a specific technical assistance that we were doing that when during stakeholder working group meetings, when the women were approached and asked what would work best for you in terms of having these meetings for decision making, and they were like, okay, maybe weekends would be better because during the week we are a bit busy with our roles and taking care of our kids. So for us to contribute to this project, then let's please hold these meetings on the weekend. Oh my God. Did you lose me there for a second?
Yeah,
Hello?
I lost you for just a second. You're back. Thank you.
Yeah. And so switching to holding stakeholder working group meetings on the weekends ensured that our the women as part of the stakeholder working group were able to participate, and that actually worked. So being that flexible and not being rigid can also help with the implementation of this gender action plan. So in terms of our gap and what actions are to be expected, and of course the policy. So the actions, we have this mainstreaming efforts. So making sure that when we are doing any activity, so specifically a technical assistance, for example, making sure that we have we are not just collecting data, but we are also making efforts prior to ensure that women and men equally are engaged to be part of decision-making processes in these activities. So whatever technical assistance is taking place, women can contribute what they believe would bring the best results, or the men as well. So those are some of the actions that are encouraged from our implementing partners, who are also, of course, the network members of the citizen. So the gender assessment and action plan template will kind of guide what they are supposed to deliver, and just not during the implementation, but even post, when they are now reflecting and looking at how this can be improved. And then one more thing in terms of staying dynamic with this gap and this gender action plan and policy is that we are open to revise it every 2 years, because what may have worked a few years ago, say 4 years ago, may not apply years to come. So we are staying dynamic and learning and revising the gender policy and action plan as needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And I think we heard some really, really good insights in terms of from the project kind of side of things, in terms of how elements and different tools, different mechanisms to really think about the full life cycle of projects and programs, and how to integrate this important gender considerations throughout, but also how this works out in practice. And I think Sharon make a good point as well in terms of like keeping things under review and in light of recent developments, so we can adapt and adjust as necessary. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm going to pause for like 10 seconds just to give the opportunity for anyone else to make any questions. But if not, actually, we do have some questions for the participants. I'd like to ask my colleague, Alexandra, to put up a questionnaire, a poll on the screen, because we wanted to hear more about your work and also understand some of the capacity gaps that might exist to help us inform future capacity building activities. So we've got the first question on the screen, which relates to how colleagues are applying gender equality and social inclusion in their work. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to just share some of your thoughts and reflections with us, if possible. So we've heard today a lot about different projects, different initiatives, different case studies, and different dimensions where gender equality and social inclusion can be applied at one's work. So I'd be really keen to hear from you on how this integration can help happen in practice. Our second question that you also see on your screen, it's what type of resources and tools that you've been using to integrate gender into your initiatives. It would be really interesting for us to learn more about those different tools and resources that exist, and how they have been used in these initiatives. And also, we would begin to hear about what type of assistance you may need to better integrate gender into your work. So those three questions will really help just us to have a better understanding of some like core components of like capacity, maybe gaps that may exist. I see some answers coming up. Let me see. It's loading on my screen. Yeah, actually, I'm not able to access the answers, I think, but maybe Alex, you're recording this information, so please keep the answers coming. I see 3 responses. And also, would like to say that it will be, you can also, we're welcome to share any additional insights with us via email. And also, I wanted to take this opportunity where colleagues are responding to the questionnaire to thank once again the organizers, also all of the speakers and the audience for the discussions on the webinar today. You've been brilliant. And I would also like to highlight that Empower and CTCN will follow up with any participants that may need assistance with gender mainstreaming in the work. So this is also why we're launching this poll, to better understand that. So we'll keep it open for a couple of more minutes. I see some responses coming up. But other than that, I want to wish you a very good end of your day, and also wish you a lovely weekend ahead, and a warm thank you to all of our speakers again. So I hope you have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.